官。
Let us call the meeting to order. We have the familiar faces from the administration, so I don't think we need any introduction. Let's get started quickly. First thing on the agenda is to follow up on issues raised at the last meeting. At the meeting dated the 9th of December, members raised a number of issues, and the administration has prepared a paper in response, paper CB 1369/14415/02. The paper has been forwarded to members. Administration, would you like to walk us through the paper first? And if members have questions, we can deal with them. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, please first take a look at paper bracket 02. A brief response to issues raised by members at the last meeting. First, it relates to the Insurance Appeals Tribunal, IAT. Member asked whether the LAT may make a determination on the basis of written submissions only. We believe that's possible, so we are going to amend the bill to allow the IAT to make a determination on the basis of written submissions only. The second issue is an appellant mechanism for reviewing the IAT's decision. According to the bill, parties to the appeal can lodge an appeal to the Court of Appeal. And if any party is not happy with the decision by the Court of Appeal, an appeal may be lodged to the CFA. C is about Section 50 of the High Court Ordinance relating to contempt of the court, and we have annexed the relevant section for members' information. And the fourth point, legal costs. Some members asked whether there can be any parameters for awarding costs made known to parties to litigations. We have got some proposals from the Law Society so that the litigants may have a rough idea of the possible legal costs to be awarded by the court. But of course, that is by no means any guidance for the court. The chairman of the IAT, being a judge of the High Court, may convene a preliminary conference so that the parties may consult the chairman on the legal costs. And the last point, some drafting issues. We have accepted proposals by the legal advisor raised at the last meeting. Such amendments are just textual in nature. That ends my introduction. We welcome questions from members. Members, do we have any questions in relation to the paper? Mr. Leung Sing. Regarding legal costs, it appears that it can be done in two ways. First, that is to make reference to guidelines made by the legal sector. But then, individual legal bodies may have their guidelines, but is that binding on the whole profession? And secondly, let's say that the parties may consult the IAT chairman. I'd like to know whether the advice by the chairman is just for reference, or is it in any way binding? I hope that there can be some certainty for the parties. Any response from the administration? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Ng, for your question. The award of cost is a discretion of the IAT. The exercise of the discretion will depend on the conduct of the parties, whether the case is frivolous or a tactic to stall. And the point is to make a decision as soon as possible without any stalling. As I said, the Law Society can only provide advice for or suggestions for reference. The final decision rests with the IAT chairman, which is, or the IAT, which is a quasi-judicial body. So the chairman makes the final decision. Yes, because this is the discretion. In some cases, the chairman might not award cost to the winning party because due to consideration for the financial position of the losing party. Any follow-up question? Mr. Chen Kim-po. So according to the administration, written submissions only may be allowed. So are you going to amend the legislation? Yes. Regarding the award of cost, I'd like to know how usually judges deal with this. For most of the time, they will follow Order 62 of the rules of the High Court. Okay. So they have the relevant order to go by. If there are no further questions, we move on. At the last meeting, we started clause by clause to facilitate members' scrutiny. The administration has prepared an index for us, paper CB 1369-1415-03. Which involves the relevant policies and related papers. So, members have got the paper. This morning we should start from clause 8. So it's paper 1833. 1314, page 11. 1833, bracket 01, page 11. All right, if we found it, can the administration walk us through? The paper. All right. The relevant sections are from clauses 9 to 15. So I will start with page 11 of the marked up copy. Page 11 is the establishment of the authority. It is currently is just a public officer. Now we propose to establish an insurance authority that is under Section 4AAA, subsection 1. I said at the last meeting, in phase 1, Once the IA is established, it will be renamed Provisional Insurance Authority, and in the second phase, the PIA will be renamed Insurance Authority. So 48882, that is what it is about. The Chinese name of the Insurance Authority and also the English name will be immediately changed to Provisional Insurance Authority immediately upon the establishment of the body corporate. And subsection 3, the requirement for the authority to have a common seal and that it is capable of suing and being sued. If there are no questions, we go on to page 12. Subclasses 5 and 6 on the requirement to maintain confidentiality, and also any legal proceedings that have been commenced or continued against the authority under the name of the PIA will continue to apply after the name is changed to IA. And 482 is about how the CE may give directions in general or in a particular case to the authority.
Let's move on to page 13 and 488. That is about the composition of the authority. The members should be appointed by the CE. That it should comprise a chairperson, a chief executive officer, and not less than 6 other directors. And non-executive directors should outnumber executive directors. And for the non-executive directors, at least are to be people with knowledge of experience in the insurance industry, and the others are to be appointed from among persons who either because of their knowledge in actuarial science, accountancy, law, or consumer of affairs, or because of their professional or occupational experience, appear to the CE to be suitable for appointment. In subsection 6, we said that Schedule 1B contains provisions on the constitution and proceedings of and other related matters. So when we come to that schedule, we will explain to members in further detail. Next, we move on to page 14. Please wait. Our legal advisor has something to say. Thank you, Chairman. Page 13, 4AA, bracket 1. There is a clarification that I would like to seek. Now, under A, there is A, B, C. After B, do we need to add and in Chinese cup? And in bracket 5, if this section ceases to be complied with, that is what is stated. Can you be more specific in your wording? Because the 4AA has to do with appointment. Now, if you said that if this section ceases to be complied with, are you talking about vacation of the posts and then reappointment has to be made? Can you be more specific on what this sentence means, or do members accept the way it is worded now? Thank you, Chairman. The drafting section, do you have anything to respond? Thank you, Chairman, and the legal advisor. With regard to subsection 1, we don't think there is a need to add an after 1B, because the meaning is very clear, because 1 covers A, B, C, because it says the authority consists of the following members at the outset. So A, B, and C should all be covered. So we don't think there is a need to add an N after B. But anyway, we'll go back and think it, give it more thoughts. Now, regarding subsection 5, if the composition of the authority doesn't comply with the 4AA, the chief executive must make appointment. necessary to comply with this section. I think the meaning is clear, but anyway, we can consider the legal advisor's suggestion and see if we can make the wordings clearer, i.e. that the composition doesn't meet with the section's requirement. Well, the way it is worded doesn't go against the intent, right? Yes. Now, members actually have given a lot of opinions when the authority's composition was discussed earlier. Mr. Chen Kim-po, I don't have any comment on this section. And I think when it comes to some controversial sections, the government can give more elaboration. Actually, the sector has given a lot of views on the composition of the authority. And if there are sections which have attracted controversies before, can the administration elaborate? Page 14. And that is about the functions of the authority. We make amendments to 4A. The functions of the authority will remain unchanged. And in A, we said that it is responsible for supervising an authorized insurers and a licensed insurance intermediaries compliance with the provisions of this ordinance. Similarly, for paragraphs subsection C, D, and DA, we are just making textual amendments to the original wordings. In section 15, we have added new functions to the IIA, and we have explained those to members at earlier meetings. EA regulate the conduct of insurance intermediaries through a licensing regime. EB promote the understanding by policyholders and potential policyholders of insurance products and the insurance industry. EC and ED have to do with regulatory strategies and studies, and also to promote the sustainable market development of the insurance industry and promote the competitiveness of the industry. And EE assist the financial secretary in maintaining the financial stability of Hong Kong. Chairman. Yes, PS. On page 15, may I add? EC, that has to do with promoting the sustainable market development of the insurance industry and promoting the competitiveness of the insurance industry in the global insurance market. This function was added in response to the insurance sector's demand. I would like to bring this to members' attention. Thank you. Any questions? If not, now let's move on to page 16. That has to do with the powers of the authority. 4B. The authority may have certain functions or incidental or conducive to performing of any of its functions. And some examples have been given, i.e. the authority may hold, acquire, lease, sell, charge, dispose of, or otherwise deal with all kinds of property, whether movable or immovable. B, as function to carry out or enter into any contracts. And C has to do with its function or power to borrow money upon the approval of the financial secretary. And D to J have to do with the general functions of a company, including, say, for example, accepting gifts. Now, if members don't have any questions, then we can move on to page 617, and that has to do with the industry advisory committees and their composition. 4C on page 17, it is stated that the authority must appoint 2 industry advisory committees. One has to do with long-term business and the other in relation to general business. These 2 committees are appointed by the financial secretary, and their appointment will be set out in Schedule 1C, which we will explain to members later. And 4D, 3 says the authority may appoint additional member after consulting the financial secretary. I have a question. 4B, 4C, and 4D. Well, let's move on. Keep going fast before I raise my questions. And 4D. Sorry, Chairman. I would like to go back and ask a question. And that is about clause 14 4A, amendment to 4A. Yes, please, go ahead. And 4A to F, you have added in a number that and that is the authority should assist the financial secretary in maintaining the financial stability of Hong Kong by taking appropriate measures in relation to the insurance industry. Well, we are on double E. Let me explain. Hong Kong is unlike overseas jurisdictions in that we just have 1 or 2 regulatory bodies which are supervising or regulating the financial industry. Hong Kong is different. We have different regulatory body for different industries. So in times, in unusual times, say in the financial tsunami, which is quite unexpected or unforeseen, very often regulatory bodies have to work together to ensure or maintain the stability of the market. And in effect, since the financial tsunami in 2008, one of the important things that we attach our importance is group supervision. In the financial market nowadays, some financial organizations have banking business, insurance business, and other financial businesses. Well, a financial organization may have problems, say, in different products like financial directive products, while its insurance business is doing fine. But then the regulatory for the insurance business will not be able to supervise or regulate these other businesses of the financial organization. So that's why we say that coordination among different regulatory bodies is essential. So that's why we need i.e. the IIA should assist the financial secretary in maintaining the financial stability of the Hong Kong market. Commissioner, do you have anything to add? The ICO now, or the OCI rather, does have the function now after the financial tsunami, and actually in the past few years, since there has been a market volatility in the insurance market, so we've been asking insurance companies to submit reports to us more frequently on their assets and other situations. Some other examples is that during the financial tsunami, we have implemented interference measures against individual financial companies, and the purpose is to maintain their financial stability and also the overall stability of the financial market in Hong Kong as a whole. So that's why we put EE there, and that is to assist the FS in maintaining the financial stability of Hong Kong. So who takes the initiative, Chairman? The Permanent Secretary said that there are several regulatory bodies. So there should be an even higher level body to oversee the whole situation. So the IIA or the OCI would be liaising with the FS. How would the mechanism be like? Will the FS give you instructions on how you should render your assistance, or you would take the initiative, you have all the tables and reports with you, and then you take the initiative in maintaining the financial stability? But if you do it, if you take your initiative, you may not have the whole picture and you may commit mistakes. So I would like to know how the mechanism is like. Well, we are doing things both ways, based on what we know in our market, or based on our what we know through our work. We will take the initiative, and at the same time, we are liaising closely with other regulatory bodies. For example, today we also work with the FS, HKMA, and SFC closely, and we will see whether there is anything untoward happening in the market, and if work needs to be done by all parties in their respective areas, we will do that, and we will work together on what we agree on. So what we need to do depends on the situation and the individual incidents. The OCI may do something on its own and then report it to the FS, and we will also maybe work together with the two other regulatory bodies and do things in a joint operation or in joint efforts. But if the three regulatory bodies disagree among themselves, what will happen? Say, if the OCI thinks that something should not be done, well, if it is done, then it will harm the interest of the industry and will not do good to Hong Kong. But then the FS may hold different views. So based on EE, who will call the shots in the end? Well, if there is a need to work together, we will do so. But if opinions differ, well, the committee or the IA will be chaired by the FS, and three regulatory bodies have their members on that committee. And if FS thinks that there is something that needs to be done to maintain stability, then the FS, as a chair, will ask the respective three regulatory bodies to do something. Then we will abide.
May I supplement? I think Ms. Sint Ho raised this question at an earlier meeting. We provided a reply in writing and said that we have to regard to the document by the IIS. They've got some core principles. I beg your pardon because I haven't got the paper with me, but there are two principles we have to abide by in the paper. And why do we have this mechanism? Because under the core principles by the IAIS, the regulator for the insurance industry has to assist the government in taking appropriate measures when there are contingency. Paper CB 1817/1314 Allow me to elaborate. The core principles, for instance, in para 20 and Article 24, they're about a macro perspective, prudent supervision. So, the overall financial stability of Hong Kong conflict with the regulation of the insurance sector? I don't think so, because the core principles of IAIS require us to have a macro-prudential supervision. So I'm sure the two are related. Ms. O, any further question? I'm happy now. So EE is about licensing and the functions of IA. And IA can also initiate investigations or upon complaints, and can also assist the FS in maintaining the financial stability of Hong Kong. Okay. Mr. Yu Xiwing. In relation to 4C, I'd like to know whether you're going to elaborate on the composition of the industry advisory committees. That will be further explained under Schedule 1C, because we will go according to the orders of the clauses. 40. I agree that other committees should be set up. But if the IA can appoint any person to become a member of the authority, well, I think the background of these members should be more familiar, or will be known by the authority. I have joined some ASBs, and all these members must have a member of the proper authority as members, or even the convener. Otherwise, it will be problematic. But it is not spelled out here. But it is in the schedule. Oh, okay. And what about the term of office? For instance, how soon a committee should be established, and what is the duration of office, so on and so forth. It is not found in our schedule, but the schedule has specified the minimum number of meetings to be held per year. It should be 4, if I remember correctly. But if these are ad hoc committees, according to administration, a member may not serve for more than 6 years. Do you have similar requirements here? Well, for ASBs, we have an internal guideline. A member may not be members of more than 6 committees at the same time, and must not serve for more than 6 years in a particular board. But that is not official. 4D is about committees established by the authority. There are 2 types. First, ad hoc committees, rather standing committees. For instance, the industry would want the IA to set up a committee for development of the industry. And this can be done under 4D. And there are other type of ad hoc committees which may be set up so that members of the industry may sit down to discuss some regulatory proposals, and the term of office may end in, say, 6 months. So there are 2 types of committees. What about 4C? Well, those advisory committees are different. They are standing advisory committees on matters relating to the industry, and the level is a bit higher. So it is not just about regulation. It can look at the development of the industry. It is an advisory body on rather broad issues. In fact, the current authority has got a similar advisory committee. It's just that in transition to the new system, there will be 2 committees. One related to general business and the other on regulatory matters. The two advisory committees will always exist. They are standing committees. But for 4D, we'll talk about ad hoc committees that may be set up for some specific matters, and there we have flexibility. I did not hear very well. I'd like to know whether membership is subject to the 6+6 rule. I don't think so, because for those we are talking about statutory advisory bodies. The IA is an independent body, and committees set up under 4D will not be ASBs, but those set up under 4CR. Because the advisory committees under 4C will be appointed by the CE. Is that clear enough? Okay. Mr. Chen Kim-po, thank you. The detailed composition of the IA committee, well, that can be found under 4C1. But some people are worried that important issues may not be put to the advisory committees for discussion, because there is no mention of what business will be put to the industry advisory committees for the discussion. How can you convince the public and the industry that in the future all important issues will first be put to the industry advisory committees for discussion? Well, these committees will be appointed by the CE to advise him on the industry. So it is not really appropriate to spell out what matters should be put to these committees for their discussion here. Anyway, it is hard to draw the line, and usually it is for the chairman to decide the agenda of the committees, and the chairman will be the chairman of IA. And usually members of the committee may also propose agenda items, and there will certainly be participation of the industry in these two committees. So the industry may propose agenda items. For instance, if there is any matter which an industry member considers important, he can then request the chairman to include it in the agenda for discussion. Of course, ultimately, it is for the chairman to decide what the agenda should be. Well, for instance, can you say here that when an item is proposed by more than half of the committee members, then the chairman must include it in the agenda? Or will it be the case that once there is a suggestion from a certain member, then the chairman will always include it on the agenda? Mr. Chen Kim-po. I think it is about the style a particular chairman works. For some chairmen, they may act when even there is only one member making a proposal, and from some chairmen, they may ignore it even if there is a majority of members supporting the views. So I think this is just like how the council here operates. Yes, of course. I just want to test the administration to see how they're going to reply. Thank you very much for your test. The usual practice is for the chairman to decide how the agenda should be. But usually when there is a suggestion from a particular member, it is for the chairman to rule. It is inappropriate to make it too rigid in the law, because the chairman has the responsibility to manage the whole agenda, not just to decide whether a certain item should be accepted. Now, if we specify or make it mandatory for the chairman to include it in a particular meeting agenda, because so many numbers of members have put such a request, it may not be very appropriate. Usually, the chairman has to decide. Mr. Yu, the two committees, one will look at long-term business and the other to general business. Well, investigation and sanction and everything will be decided by the IA, and the IAT will also decide whether an intermediary has breached the regulations and whether sanctions should be imposed. So, will this advisory committee be the body to receive complaints in the future? If there is any complaints about the investigation or sanctioning, so on and so forth, I'd like to know whether these two advisory committees will deal with such complaints. Yes, I get Mr. Yu's question. These two advisory committees will not deal with any complaints against the IA's exercise of its power, because the two advisory committees will discuss general business related to the industry. For instance, for this risk-based capital framework under proposal, it will affect capital requirement on an insurance company. So for such a general business, it will be discussed by the advisory committee. But for complaints, we believe the IA will set up a committee to handle complaints.
As to how the authority should discharge its functions in investigation and imposing sanctions, on top of that, the CE will also appoint a review process committee, which will see whether the IA is abiding by the law in discharging its functions, so that recommendations can be made if irregularities are found. With regard to people not being happy about disciplinary sanctions imposed on them, the aggrieved parties can lodge an appeal with the IAT, and the IAT can overrule the earlier decision or can ask or return the case to the IA for further scrutiny. So we're talking about three different types of committees. Review process committee, who is coordinating for the establishment of that committee. That review process committee is appointed by the CE. Now, for the existing review process committee under the OCI, there is an independent secretariat serving it. It will ask the OCI for certain papers on certain cases, and they will see whether the OCI has abided by the relevant procedures before imposing sanctions. And if irregularities are found, recommendation will be made. And in the last several meetings, actually, we've submitted a paper on this subject for members' reference. So if members are interested on the subject, we can explain further to you how the committee works. Now it is required to compile a report annually on the cases it has reviewed and whether the procedures are adhered to properly, whether there are irregularities, and so on. So, will this review committee be set up under the IA? There will be a review committee for every body. Now, after the IA, the CE will appoint a review committee. The MPFA, well, starting from December 2012, it has a new function of monitoring MPF's intermediaries. So the CE has also appointed a review process committee for the MPFA as well. Well, but the report hasn't been published yet. And actually, 80% of the MPF intermediaries are also insurance intermediaries. So there may be a lot of overlapping. Now, for this review process committee, is it bound by certain legislation, or is it the CE will make the appointment, or what? Well, it's the discretion of the CE. Well, he has a say on the composition of the review committee, and we will not be in a position to say the ratio of the members. Now, for the existing review committee, we definitely have participation from the industry, because we want the industry to give us the perspective on whether the procedures we are implementing are fair and just. So it means that there is no standard at all. It's just that the CE will have the say, perhaps after listening to views from the government officials. So there is no reference on the ratio of the different types of members, right? Is there a certain reference, say, from other regulatory bodies like the HKMA? Because if without such a reference, I think there is problematic. Perhaps there may be 10 members in this review committee, and then 9 of them are not from the industry. Then that's going to be problematic, because our views from the industry may not be fully reflected. Well, whether the voices of the industry can be heard depends not, say, on the number of members on the committee. Say for the MPF review committee, we have representatives from the industry, we have lawyers, we have accountants, and the chairman is a retired accountant. So we do have expertise from different professions, which can help us to make sure that the committee acts fairly and justly. And actually, the review committee is not there to monitor the industry. Rather, it will take a professional perspective to see whether IA has dealt with the different matters in a fair and just manner. I'm not too worried about the composition or the ratio of the different members on the process review panel. Now, we must have someone from the industry to sit on the panel. For advisory bodies which have to deal with a certain industry, we must have representatives from the industry sitting on those bodies. Now, as to the number or the ratio of the different types of members, I think we have to strike a balance. When I talk about the industry, I think all relevant stakeholders should be included. Now, for this process review panel, will it be set out in the legislation? The CE will appoint the members to the panel through the interpretation in general clauses ordinance. It's not set out within this ordinance. Thank you. Mr. Ng Lang Sing. On 4B, the powers of the authority. I have this question. I don't know whether it has been raised before. One of its functions is supervision. And let's look at 4BI. It says clearly, do all things that the authority thinks fit for its administration and management. So it will do administration and management. Now, for supervision, or sometimes we call it regulation, that is also falls under its powers. The Hong Kong MA is called an authority. An airport authority, hospital authority, broadcasting authority. They are all called 管理局 in Chinese. It's not called 監管局. Now, in overseas jurisdictions, we have regulatory body by the name of 監管局, and they look at very specific areas. So have we given certain thoughts on the Chinese name before? Now, 房委會 is called Housing Authority. That's an exception. But this body was set up a long time ago. It was named a long time ago. But we are now talking about the financial sphere. Should we be making all the names consistent? I don't think it's a major issue, but I don't think we should deviate from the norm in the use of the Chinese name. All right, to take that question. Mr. Ng asked why we don't use the name 管理局 instead of 監管局. For SFC, we also have 監管局 as well. I think it's just a matter of the Chinese rendition. I think we should focus on the powers instead. And the person in charge is really the insurance authority. So I believe that the name can fully reflect the work it will undertake. So on this particular point, I don't think we should necessarily follow the examples of HKMA or AA. And Mr. Ng also pointed out that names vary across different sectors. I think it's important that we just we have the power under this authority. So you want to highlight the function of the regulation of the authority, right? And apart from its supervisory role, would you be allowing the IA to do more administrative work and management work? And IA should work closely together with HKMA, and under HKMA, it also has a development branch, so it's undertaking development work. Now, for IA in the future, will development work and also management work be undertaken? Will its work portfolio in that area be even surpassing that of its regulatory role? Now, I is quite wide already, and the authority is entrusted with the work of promoting the development of the industry and creating a suitable business environment and so on and so forth. So if we just confine it to having a supervisory role, then that may not be good. Chairman, the authority will definitely undertake work in management and developing the industry. So under 4A, we have these functions listed out already. I think it's just a matter of naming. What references should we take? For example, SFC, in its Chinese name, it doesn't have the words 管理. But then SFC also undertakes work in developing and managing the industry. So I think we have to look at the details of the provisions of the ordinance. And the name doesn't can't be all-embracing with regard to the functions that it's going to undertake. All right, we note Mr. Ng's comments and also the administration explanation. If we change the Chinese name now, it will have a deep or wide implications, so that may not be appropriate. Okay, if we don't have any further questions, then let's move on. 4D. Chairman, well, we've already discussed 4D. Let's move on to page 18. I have a question then. There are so many committees. I note for BE, accepting gifts. I'm sure all of our committees will be bound by the Prevention of Bribery Ordinance. And if we state accept gifts here, will it be in breach of the relevant ordinance? There are just 2 words in English, 4 words in Chinese here. It looks simple, but then the matter can be complicated. For other advisory or other similar bodies, do we have a similar provisions like this, accepting gifts? Yes, the Chinese pronunciation should be 会长. Well, Mr. Jester Zhang like us to have the correct pronunciation in Chinese. Well, in many regulatory bodies and statutory bodies, we do have similar provisions. In many cases, we may have exchanges with overseas bodies. There may be exchange of gifts and acceptance of gifts. So that's why we have this provision. Sometimes we undertake public education activities, investor education activities. Maybe a complicated product is involved, and these IA may work together with, say, the Consumer Council on public education. And there may be cash donations for such public education work. So if we have this clause here, then it puts beyond doubt that the IA can accept such gifts or donations.
This may not conflict with the Prevention of Bribery Ordinance because it is about a public officer who accepts advantage in the course of his public office leading to conduct may be in breach of his official duty. Whereas here, when it comes to the acceptance of gifts by the authority in the exercise of his official duties, I don't think it is a problem. All right, if you're talking about souvenirs, of course, it is acceptable. It would not constitute corruption or bribery. The question is, the acceptance of gifts here, I think you're talking about by the authority itself and not by individual members of the authority. Because this clause is about the authority itself, not individual members of the authority. This is for sure. But even before the establishment of the IA, well, I have issued a directive for the whole industry. For the Office of the Commissioner of Insurance, we've said that no gifts must be sent to our office at festivals, not even for the office itself, not to mention individual members. We've restated that all such gifts will be resent to charitable organizations regardless of the nature, and we also will not take note of who is the sender. So this is our long-standing practice. So all these guidelines for the industry will continue. And for members or officers of the authority, it will be subject to Section 104. All members of the authority will be bound by the POBO. So we are talking about souvenirs and certificates or photos, exchange of such minor items referred to by the Deputy Secretary. Well, the acceptance of such souvenirs and gifts will have to be authorized by the bill. But for the industry itself, we have very strict guidance. Any such a gift to the authority itself would not be allowed. Ms. Ho, thank you for raising this, Chairman, because there have been too many scandals recently, and this has caused the community to be worried. And Ms. Choi said that this clause is for the authority itself, not for individual members. So when we come to that clause, perhaps we will take extra care. Yes, that's clause 104. Regarding the ICAC, even the ex-commissioner have received a rather expensive I think a screen from a mainland organization, although it was placed at his office, not at home, but that was scandalous as well. So have you considered how such an incident will not be repeated? How can you prevent it from happening to the authority here? Yes, we have an amendment here to say that a POBO is applicable to IA. As we all know, the ICAC has got a prevention of bribery division or department. It will visit public bodies to help them to establish code of practice. So we'll propose that the ICAC Prevention of Bribery Department discuss with the IA after its establishment so as to set up a code of practice for the authority. Yes, I don't mind if you're being explicit when it comes to prevention of bribery. For instance, you can add here that without prejudice to a certain code or whatever, gifts may be accepted. Yes, we can discuss with our legal advisor or draftsman. In the past, there was not such a big concern, but because of recent incidents, legislators, regardless of the political affiliation, will be concerned about this matter. So please make it explicit. And please note our concern. I think it is good if you put on record our concern and consider amendment to the ordinance or the bill here. Legal advisor 4D4, bracket 4. I have a drafting matter for the Bureau to consider. Page 17, 4D, bracket 4. A reference of a matter to a committee does not prevent the authority from performing any of its functions. Can the administration consider making it clearer here? So who refers a party to a committee? This is just a drafting suggestion for members' consideration. The subject, perhaps I should be made clear here. Thank you, legal advisor and chairman, for your suggestion. Bracket 4 echoes bracket 2. Bracket 2 says that the authority may refer a matter to a committee. So a reference of a matter. Well, in the English text, in bracket 2, we use the verb refer, and in 4 here, we use the noun reference. But the two should be read together. Bracket 2 and 4 echoes one another, and if they're read together, then the meaning is clear. But of course, we can go back and consider the legal advisor's suggestion. But reading it now, we don't see any ambiguity. Well, I think you are talking about the English text, but then you have to bear in mind that in between there is bracket 3. Page 18, 4E. Staff and consultants of the authority, and the authority may employ persons for the remuneration and allowances and other terms and conditions that the authority determines. 4F, for the operational need of the authority, it is specified here that the authority may delegate its functions to its members, committees, and employees. And committees include a committee established under Section 4D. Subsection 2. A delegation must not be made in relation to the power of the authority to delegate under this section, and also in relation to a function specified in Schedule 1D. We will explain to members what is meant by a function specified in Schedule 1D later. And in delegating its function, the authority may revoke it, may attach restrictions or conditions, and in so doing, it cannot can also attach restrictions, including those on the exercise of the power to subdelegate. 3D, it is said that the authority may employ consultants or whatever to assist it to perform its functions. Here it says consultants, agents, and advisors. But in Chinese, there are only two corresponding terms, 顧問及代理人, meaning consultants and agents. So can you please clarify whether a similar drafting mode has been used in other pieces of legislation? And here it says the authority may engage consultants. In other pieces of legislation, sometimes it reads may engage experts or professional consultants. So I'd like to know whether it can be any general consultants or advisors. First, deal with the drafting aspect first. Yes. For E is made in reference to Section 6G of 485 MPF ordinance, and also SFC Section Cap 571 Section 9. And regarding the use of consultants, agents, and advisors, we have encountered this in other pieces of legislation because consultants and advisors in English is similar to 顧問 in Chinese. So there may be 3 terms in the English text, but only 2 in Chinese, is because 顧問can be translated into both consultants and advisors. So that's why we don't believe there is any discrepancy between the 2 texts. As for whether we can add experts or professional consultants, we'll go back and check. I don't know whether the Policy Bureau has anything to supplement. Thank you. First, on consultants, we want to make it more open. There may be There may be people who haven't been working in the trade for a long time but not professional consultants, and if they may not be professionals, but when necessary, we hope that they can be employed to help the authorities. So we don't believe there is any need to add adjective or qualifier to the word consultants. I'm also on 4E. The authority may decide to employ any persons. Do you have any budget, or rather the size or the number of persons that it can employ, and also what are the reference for employing or for paying these persons? In 2009, we commissioned a consultancy, and we estimated that upon first establishment, the IA needs about a staff of 250, but then it was done in 2009. And at the last FC meeting, some members asked whether we have to reassess the manpower demand. So we are updating that estimate. Perhaps there may be some revision to the establishment size on the basis of the 2009 consultancy report. But there is no mention of the basis or the criteria for employing persons. For instance, you may say based on the budget provided by the government every year, or based on the income of the authorities and so forth, because there is nothing here for the authority to decide how many persons it can employ. When it comes to human resources, usually an organization will have forward planning.
And we will look at what regulatory work that needs to be done, say, in the next 5 to 10 years. And we'll look at the development of the industry, international trends, and make projections on our regulatory work. Now, for example, we are now conducting a risk-based capital framework, and we envisage that we need to employ more accountants or actuaries to be doing this work. So the budget will include our manpower needs. And we should not do it the other way around, i.e., we have a budget and then we decide on the number of employees. That should not be the case. The income from the IA doesn't come from the government. 70% of the income will come from the levy on insurance premium policies, and 30% from license fees and service fees. When the IA is first set up, the government will commit or inject $500 million to the IA as a startup fund. So initially, 500 million will be given to the IA for its startup. Well, why did I say that things should be written more clearly? I understand that for some body set up by the government, they have to be self-financed. And if this is the case, they may increase the fees charged on the sector. If all the money comes from the government and we have a budget, then things will be simpler. But then this is not the case. 70% will come from levy on insurance premiums and 30% from the government. If we don't spend within our means, and we don't have such a type of principle, the IA can employ people or employees indefinitely, and the burden then will be on the industry, and then the industry will pass on the burden then onto the consumers. Will it be the case that the IA will do, in the name of doing better monitoring work, employ more and more people and then hire a very high pay CEO. So I would just like to see that funds are spent properly. And what I'm seeing from this clause is that you do have a lot of power, but then there is no checks and balance here. The Deputy State Secretary has already explained. We will have a budget, and then the manpower needs will be reflected in the budget. I'm now actually doing this supervisory work on the insurance industry, and I think we need to be flexible. In 2008-09, during the financial tsunami, we did a lot of frequent follow-up work on each insurance company. We have to be very clear about the cash flow and the business of the individual companies. The market was very volatile then, and the regulatory bodies worldwide were doing the same thing. So these were sort of unforeseen incidents, and the IA in the future may have to hire extra manpower on a temporary basis in incidents like this. For example, in the Lehman Brothers incident, we had to hire extra people to do the work. So it's very difficult for us to set out clear rules on when and how they should be hiring people and under what circumstances. The financial market is often very volatile, and we have to take prompt actions, urgent actions in response to urgent situations. Now, OCI is still a government body, and we have difficulties in responding very promptly. So we count on our staff to do extra work. They had to work for over 10 hours a day for 7 days in a row to deal with the enormous workload at that time. So we have to give the regulatory body certain flexibility. But having said that, I do appreciate Mr. Yu's concerns. So all the service charges to be imposed are written in the subsidiary legislation. So the IA cannot have its own say on fee increase. They have to come to the LegCo to do amendment on subsidiary legislation before effecting a pay or a fee increase. So the LegCo can scrutinize our fee increase applications. They can look at our spending situation, our budget, our annual report, our increase in manpower, our increase in budget, and so on. If the LegCo believes that the IA is not doing things properly, they can voice their concern. And all the annual reports and the fees are laid out in the annual report. So if we have to apply for a fee increase, the LegCo can approve it or otherwise. So there is indeed a check and balance, and it's not the case that the IA has all the say and pass on the financial burden all to the insurers and the insured. Will you be under the audit Director of Audit scrutiny as well? Yes. Ms. Ho. I think we also need to sort of supervise or monitor the pay of this chief executive, because the AA in the recent case they are paying the new CEO 40% more. Now, we want to have an oversight not just on the additional manpower you're going to hire, but also on the pay increase for your staff. For example, Ms. Choi, you are part of the civil servants, and then your pay is subject to all sorts of restrictions under the civil service regulations. But then if IA is going to be a statutory body, then, well, they can have all the say in the remuneration given to the staff. Well, that's not what I understand to be. I've been to the non-executive. And once a non-executive director of the MPFA. Well, any pay increase for the staff has to be discussed by the board and then approved by the FS. And well, sometimes objections are raised. Now, even for ordinary staff members, and at that time we did pay 6,000 extra for the staff, and that still had to be deliberated on by the MPFA board, and we had to factor in an increase in our budget, and we applied for extra funding from the government, but the government rejected our application, so the extra amount had to be absorbed by the MPFA itself. And in order to do that, we have to make certain cuts in spending in other areas, because at the end of the year, we must not overspend in our budget. So I think we do have stringent mechanisms for these kind of statutory bodies when it comes to budgeting. The MPFA has to be self-financed. Is it the same for the IA in the future? If it is not a self-financed body, then the budget has to be vetted by the FSTB, right? Well, Chairman, we are going to be self-financed. We foresee that the IA will impose a small levy on premiums, and that would be a stable source of income. And then on the insurers, we have a licensing fee. And if there are special applications by insurance companies, we also charge a fee. So the income comes from these three parts. This is very in line with the requirement and the core principles of the IAIS, and that is they require the regulatory bodies to be independent of the government. If there is sudden increase in workload and you need to hire more people, then we are happy with it. For example, in a financial scenario, you have to do more regulatory and supervisory work, and you bring in more people, then we have no problem with it. We don't want people to work around the clock, 7 days a week, and so on. But what I'm worried is about the CE, the hiring of the CE. Well, the airport authority has a similar a structure as you do, and because they couldn't hire an appropriate person, they have to increase the remuneration by 40% before they could bring in the appropriate person. Now, I want to have raise a question on consultant and advisors. Consultant and advisor have 顾问, the same word in Chinese. Now, for example, if you want to have some re-engineering exercise, you might bring in a consultant to help you out, say, once in several years, to look at your operation, how it can be improved, and so on. But for advisors, I don't know why they are needed. To my understanding, advisor is somebody who will give you sort of third-party opinions. For other statutory bodies, do they also engage advisors? Do we have to pay advisors? Do we have to pay them a wage or an honorarium, or they are being full-time people? So who to take that question? Perhaps I'll share my experience and my work. Now, as to the drafting aspect, I'll leave it up to the draftsman to take that question. Well, I see that both types of people are needed. Ms. Sitho asked whether, say in once every few years or 10 years, we need to bring in a consultant to help us to take a look at our management framework or structure. And also on insurance matters, we need consultants to help us out. For example, we are doing this risk-based capital framework. We have already engaged a consultant to help us out to take stock of similar frameworks overseas to make certain calculations. So we are working on both types of work, general work and also insurance-specific work or projects. Now for advisors, I can imagine that there are people who are very well versed on certain insurance matters. Then they may be brought in to do one-off work or give one-off opinions to us. And whether the name in Chinese is Guman or what, or in English is consultants and advisors, we have to pay them for the work they do. With regard to whether we should have both consultants and advisors in the drafting, I have an open mind. But what I want to say is that we have different scenarios in our work. I'm not very proficient in my English, but my feeling is that consultants and advisors are somewhat different. Consultant may be an individual or a company. Advisors are usually individuals. Well, we see both scenarios. Consultants may be engaged for a certain period of time, but for advisors, they may work on ad hoc projects. So this is my impression. In Chinese, 顾问 covers everything. Well, it's important that they do their work.
Ms. Ho, I think this is undesirable. Of course, the legal officer told us that in other pieces of legislation they have seen this similar drafting. 3 terms in English and 2 terms in Chinese. But I think it is time you tidy up the drafting. You should, for instance, use some qualifier to distinguish between consultant and advisor. Now, for consultant, we can all understand, but advisors, can the administration provide information to tell us? Use an example of the SFC. Because the DS told us that in such organizations, there are such advisors. Can you tell us the number and also their remuneration? Because I think all of us, regardless of our political affiliation, is concerned that once given the power, the authority may inflate its establishment, and we can only monitor the IA when they ask for an increase in levy. Because if they have a surplus, they may want to employ more staff to use up the surplus. Now, if the industry business is booming and there are many policies, then perhaps we should lower the levy. We don't want the IA to squander its income. Yes, can that be, because the levy itself can be lowered. Let me give you an example. Legal advisor may give us legal advice on particular cases. Whether other regulators have this differentiation, we'll go and check and provide a paper later. And secondly, whether there is any mechanism to lower or raise the levy rate of policies. Well, we have a sliding scale. Under Clause 133 of the bill, the Senior Council may reduce the levy when the reserve is sufficient for 24 months operation of the IA. So the levy rate can be reduced. But 24 months of operation, that is room for the IA to maneuver. Yes, this is understandable, because it's impossible to put down an exact amount in the bill. When it comes to corporate governance, the important thing is to trust or to employ people you can only trust. Only employ people only you can trust. And it says the levy will be about 70% of his income. In fact, the levy is only 0.1% of the premium of a policy, and there is a cap. Mr. Yu Siwing. I think the power to the IA is too much under 4E. Can we add a proviso? For instance, the authority may decide based on the actual circumstances or reasonable circumstances. Because 4E gives the IA unchecked powers as it is now. Yes, we can consider this, but for sure the IA will be very transparent in its operation, and all its decisions must be open. And its budget has to be approved by the FS, so the government does monitor the income and expenditure of the IA. But of course, Mr. Yu's proposal can be considered. I think Mr. Yu's proposal is not just about monitoring, but for the sake of prevention. Okay, please consider this. Let's go on. Page 24G. The IA may delegate certain powers to the Hong Kong MA for regulation of the activities of frontline banking staff. 1. The authority may delegate its power to the MA in relation to the business of regulated activity carried on by an authorized institution, and conditions may be imposed after the C has given approval, and the approval can also be varied or withdrawn. 5. A delegation must not prevent the authority from performing the function delegated. And 8. If the powers are delegated to the MA, then the provisions of this ordinance are to operate as if the MA has replaced the IA. I'd like to know whether this is very similar to the banking ordinance. Not really, Chairman. The powers of the IA in investigation and inspection will be delegated to the Hong Kong MA. But then for securities, well, because some banks do carry out security business, so they are subject to 2 regulators. For banking, for the banking sector, they have a schedule listing out all registered persons. And Hong Kong may require banks to ensure that the professional competence of these registered persons are equivalent to a person's licensed under the SF ordinance. In other words, there is no powers delegated to the SFC, nor does the SFC directly regulate such persons. But in this case, the power of inspection investigation has been delegated or transferred to the Hong Kong MA. I apologize. Mr. Leung Sing first, to be followed by Ms. Sit Ho. Thank you, Chairman. On 4G, the delegation will be done by the Seeing Council. I have no objection to that, because the Seeing Council is the highest power or authority in Hong Kong. But then for a particular industry, there is a secretary in the government responsible. I'd like to know why here the Seeing Council is empowered to do the authorization here instead of the financial secretary. So the Hong Kong MA and also the IA may be consulted, but not the FS. Why is there no mention of the FS? Will he be bypassed? Is the authorization or delegation so important that the highest decision-making body in Hong Kong has to be involved instead of the FS? Yes, we have discussed this internally, and we believe that when one regulator, now this regulator IA, is appointed by the CE before it can discharge its power under the ordinance. And if the powers are delegated to another regulator, we believe a higher level body should be empowered to make that delegation to see whether conditions should be imposed. And after our internal discussion, we believe that the Seeing Council's approval is needed. Then when it comes to actual operation, I'd like to know the likelihood that the powers may not be done in one go, but from time to time with variation in the conditions. If the delegation involves things that have to be varied from time to time, and if such a high-level body is involved in the delegation, will it impede the smooth operation of the system? Well, under 4G1, we said that only powers under sections 64 ZZF6 and 64 ZZH1 can be delegated to the Hong Kong MA, and that is powers of inspection and investigation. That's very clear-cut. It's not that any powers can be delegated to the Hong Kong MA at any time, because we have banks selling insurance in Hong Kong as well, selling policies as well, because banks offer wholesale wealth management services to customers. We don't want the industry to be subject to two regulators. So to lessen the burden of compliance, we have this arrangement. When it comes to frontline inspection and investigation, the Hong Kong MA can do it. We have no intention to delegate other powers to the MA. For instance, licensing is something solely for the IA. The regulatory standards also, that's the power of the IA. After an inspection investigation, a report must be submitted to the IA, and sanctioning or disciplinary action will be taken by the IA only. So the same criteria for disciplining also rests with the IA, so there is no inconsistency. But when it comes to day-to-day inspection and investigation, even at present, it is being done by the Hong Kong MA for convenience sake, and therefore these two powers are delegated to the MA under this clause. If, for whatever reason, IA thinks that it is better for it to recover this power, then under 4G5 it is clearly spelled out that the IA still retains that power. So in a particular case, the IA can choose to exercise or perform these functions by itself. When it comes to a day-to-day inspection, because Hong Kong MA does inspect banks, and if in the course of inspection it is found that records of policy sale and or rather, the Hong Kong MA can check whether the sale of insurance is in compliance with the relevant organization. That is good. So I think it is more efficient for the Hong Kong MA to take up this part, this duty.
But it doesn't affect the IA's own power. Chairman, let me try to declare an interest. I am from the banking sector. I would like to declare an interest. We've consulted the sector, and they welcome the HKMA be doing this part of the regulation so that one company is spared the trouble of being subject to several regulators. And then government officials mentioned about using one yardstick only, and I support that. Now, if the IA is set up and runs in the initial period, we may not do things perfectly. But anyway, I support that there are two bodies doing the work here. And I hope that these two bodies will use the same yardstick in terms of enforcement of the law. Well, I represent the sector in supporting this kind of arrangement, Ms. Sit-Ho. I originally meant to ask questions about Chinese and English wording. 4G5, I would like to follow up. There are two regulators doing the supervision. Of course, there will be communication. Will that be the case that one body will come and check on you, and then the next day, another body will check on you? Will that be better liaison between the two regulators before any checks are being carried out? Now, I said something about installing a water tank at Old Chinese Mint Building. The party was prosecuted by both the police and the fire service department. Now, in 4G1, It says the monetary authority instead of Hong Kong MA. Why is there a inconsistency? And for G7, it is stated 被准授. I thought you would use the passive voice here too, but in the English version, you use a noun clause. Well, I'm sorry, I have to speak in a cocktail mode now. But this is part of our duty, I agree. You use a noun clause in the English version. Why do you use a passive voice in the Chinese version? The administration, will you take Ms. Ho's first question? And as to the question on drafting, perhaps the D of J colleague can take that. In relevant pieces of legislation, the term used is monitoring authority is an individual, a public officer. So that's the norm. So that's why we used monetary authority. But in the English, you said it's monetary authority. Well, let me put it this way. The English version is monetary authority, and then the authority is defined as a public officer. And the Chinese version is 金融管理專員. In response to Ms. Ho, there will be definitely liaison between the two bodies. We have signed a memorandum of understanding with the HKMA, and for the future IA, it will also sign a memorandum of association understanding with the HKMA and will liaise with them regularly. If there are inspections and investigations, they would be carried out based on the memorandum of understanding, and the HKMA will report all the cases to the IA. Now, for subsection 5, if the case involves not just the banks but other bodies as well and has more far-reaching implications, then it may not be appropriately handled by HKMA. So under our liaison mechanism, we'll sort out who to take the work forward. Should it be just the HKMA solely undertaking the work, or is it the IA in the future? So this kind of liaison has been going on even for now. So that will not be the case that body will be approached by HKMA for a certain complaint case, and then the next day the IA will come. So that will not be the case. We would, among the two of us, sort out among themselves as to who will take on certain cases and who will prepare the reports. So there will be communication between the two regulators. Okay. Hi. And also for G7, Chairman. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Please switch on the mic. Well, the English version is, if there is a delegation in relation to a power of the authority, Mrs. Sidho said that the first clause here is a delegation and noun. But then in the Chinese version, it seems that it is in a verbal form. Well, let's go back to the basic principle of a law of drafting. What's most important is that the legal effect of both versions is the same, and I think we can allow flexibility in the drafting. Now, in the English version, if there is a delegation, it's very clear, because in English we often use the phrase "if there is," and that sets the scene. But then, if in the Chinese version you have to have a literal translation of the English version, then if you say 如有 保監局的權力的轉授. Well, it doesn't flow in Chinese. And in the Chinese version, the sentence structure is always there is a subject, object, and a verb. And then there is a subject which does something through the verb to the object. So that flows more naturally in the Chinese version. So we would use this construction in the Chinese version. Well, the meaning is the same. And the subject in the English version is also about the delegation, which is the same of the main subject in the Chinese version. So the meaning of the two versions is the same. I've always said that the D of J should have some Chinese experts, Chinese language experts. Before 1997, we had this draft compilation of the bilingual laws, and they did a good job in coming up with Chinese translation of the laws, which is comprehensible to people. Well, we can help you out in seeking funding from the FS. I think we need to see that this is necessary. Well, let's finish with 4. Sorry. Mr. Yu Si-wing mentioned about process review panel, and the insurance sector has certain comments on that. You stated in 4D that there are some other committees which can be established. I will write into the DS on this point, process review panel, how it should be included in the legislation and how it should be established. I will write into the DS on that. All right, let's go on to 4H. And that is, when required by the Financial Secretary, the authority must furnish to the FS the information on principles, practices, and policies, and the reasons for adopting such principles, practices, and policies. I think if there is no further question, I think we'll just end the clause by clause here. Division 1, 4 parts finished, and then Division 2, accounting financial arrangements. I think I'll end the meeting here. The next meeting is scheduled for the January the 12th at 2:30 p.m. The next meeting is the 26th of January originally, but then it clashes with the briefing by the Secretary for Environment on the policy address. So the meeting has been scheduled for the 27th of January, Tuesday, 10:40 a.m. So from the 26th to the 27th, 2 meetings to follow. AOB? Well, the only thing that I want to say is Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See you next year.